Hey everybody, welcome to Pink Shade. It's Mary Payne here and it's Thursday and that means we're going to talk about Bravo. It's Shades of Bravo Thursday. I think we've landed on that title, still not sure. It's Bunky Bravo. It's the day we talk about Bravo. So today I have two Bravo experts. They're the BravBros. It's Steele and Shooter. One is a given name and one is not. I just found that out. And they're the Brav Bros. And it's hard for me to say Brav Bros. I gotta say Bravo Bros.
We get that a lot,
Yep.
actually. We got
Yeah.
it. It's either one's fine. Bravo Bros, Brav Bros. We don't nitpick around here, but happy to be here. This is Steele.
Yeah.
Shooter, happy to be here as well. And don't call us the Bravo boys. We
Yeah,
draw the line there. We got to keep it at bros
yeah.
instead of boys.
Okay. How you feel
Yeah,
like Bravo
I've never been
dudes?
called a Bravo expert before. I
That was
like that.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
like
sounds
that
really
one.
good.
Oh,
So
yeah.
thank you.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. Well, listen, I think you guys are experts. You always have hot takes, and it is nice now that you're the second and third straight guy I know that covers Bravo. So Ryan Bailey's number one, and then we
Yep.
got
Love
two and
Ryan.
three. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys are really you created a niche for yourself. A niche.
Yeah, we did. We did. It was an interesting story. But we got to speak with Ryan a few months ago, probably like April or May.
Mm.
Had a great
Mhm.
time with him, and he said the same thing. He's like, "This is just so much fun. I get to have like two of my bros on with me. We get to sit around and just talk about reality TV. You never get this." So we
Yeah.
love that element of everything. That's kind of what we want to bring to the world.
Yeah, but it is a very interesting perspective because you come at it like guys, like straight hetero guys who are like, "Wow, I can't believe this one said that to that one." And I also love your takes that I've been seeing lately. I'm seeing a lot of it on the TikTok. I'm trying to
Oh
like
yeah.
be
Yeah.
young and with hip with the kids, and I see a lot of your takes, especially the one that you just had on the Jessel Pavitt situation,
Oh yeah.
where on New York when Erin and her husband and Cy and her husband went out and were just like, "Oh yeah, I'd fuck other chicks." And they're
Yeah.
both of the wives are like, "Stop it."
Well,
It's
not
like,
even. I mean, if you look at the wives, they
"What?"
almost like laugh to try to we call it the cool mom thing, like, oh, we're different, like we're cool chicks. We're down with
Yeah.
whatever they're saying. Ha ha ha. Meanwhile, I hate the trope that, every guy out there just wants to get in a girl's pants and this and that. And when you see guys like that on TV talking like that, it furthers that, especially when they're in a marriage and now they're talking about the only thing they seem to care about is sex with their wives. Like if your wife has not had sex with you in a year and a half, that's a genuine issue. Something's going on with her or the
Mhm.
marriage. Like you need to look inward and figure that shit out. Instead, Abe goes, "Oh, a year and a half, I'd fuck somebody else immediately." The other guy goes, "Oh, the relationship's over." And Cy goes, "That's the right answer. That's the right answer." It's like,
Yeah.
so if you guys haven't had sex in a year and a half, instead of sitting down and going, "Hey, what's wrong? How can we bridge this gap?" Like Jessel and Pavitt eventually did. And we've learned kind of over this season. In the beginning, Jessel came off not great. We
Mhm.
kind of figured out like she was just trying to connect with people. She's a little rough around the edges and she kind of puts her foot in her mouth, but I don't think it's malicious by any means. And after seeing her talk with Pavitt, after seeing them finally have sex, not seeing them have sex, but they
Yeah.
they, they were going to have sex that night on the staycation. It seems like they're genuinely good friends. It seems like they were in a weird place. Jessa was insecure postpartum. Like there's a lot of things that you have to deal with, obviously. They
Yeah.
have twins, like it turns your life upside down. So instead of taking this weird approach in which they're all hounding them about their sex life, when they should be looking at their own relationships and saying, "Hey, maybe we have a problem because my husband's going to step out on me if we don't have sex for an extended period of time."
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
what's the time limit? Is it a year and a half or is it 6 months? Like, where does that start where he's like, "Oh, it's been too long. I'm going to go somewhere else."
Yeah. Won't you be interested to see if they talk about that at the reunion about the guys just immediately both and maybe they were just trying to do the like, "Oh, we're so funny and cool." But I was like, "What?" Just watching it when it came on, I was like, "Well, these guys are dicks." Like, I thought,
Exactly.
at least I kinda thought Abe was listen, I liked Abe because I was like, "Oh, he's a deadhead. I'm a deadhead, so I like Abe." But now I'm like, "No, not now, no, that's not funny."
No, no, and we
Yeah.
and we actually really appreciate when the husbands get on those shows because as straight guys, we can look at them and be like, "Oh, well, that's a fun guy." And now we understand where say Erin gets it from, say Sai gets it from. But when we see the four of them sitting down and going through all of that, we feel like we can speak on that immediately and say, well, no, these guys are dickheads. Like
Yeah.
that's all it is. Like they're a bunch of assholes. This is not normal behavior. I don't care about that whole, well, it's New York, you got to have this whole lifestyle thing going on here. That's not how it works. And then we actually get to see, and thankfully we get Jenna sitting down with Jessel this week. Jenna says immediately, well, no, I feel like there's more going on there and you guys are taking the time to fix it. So you're going to abandon, a 14, 15, 20-year relationship because you haven't had sex in 18 months? It's just crazy to say on TV in front of millions of people and joke about it. And then they sort of doubled down on it this week. So no, those guys, we liked them too. We liked Abe originally because we felt like he brought a bit of a cool head to whatever situation that was going on in the
Mm.
beginning of the season. We looked at that, said he might be a good dude. As soon as he sits down and he says something like that, no, he's right back out the window. So no, we try to change things pretty much every week, which is fun. Steele alluded to having those notebooks that he just like scribbles things out and writes through everything. That's
Yeah.
how we operate. We'll go from a week to week basis. We don't stand behind one person. If you do something shitty like those husbands did, we're gonna call it out immediately.
Yep.
Yeah. It's talking to you guys, it just spurred something in me that I didn't even think when I was writing my notes. Was what are your thoughts on the Jersey guys? Because the Jersey guys are real
Hmm.
front
Oh
and
man.
center on that show. Like, what do you think about like Joe Gorga and his, he's got to get his poison out twice a day. Twice a day.
Yeah, like stuff like that. It's just that whole antiquated where it's like the wife's responsibility to make sure like the husband's satisfied or shit like that, which is what Joe's alluding to there. He's like, I need to get the poison out twice a day and blah blah. Like, I think the Jersey husbands are fun to watch a lot. I actually do appreciate the all guys scene sometimes. Like last year when they're smoking weed at Marge's house, like that was a funny scene.
Hmm.
I think they bring good comedic relief. I think the problem lies in when they take on a role of a housewife themselves
Yeah.
and they start trying to promote drama, they start trying to insert themselves into situations in which they do not belong. We don't need to hear from Joe Gorga 90% of the time when something's going on with Melissa and Teresa. We also
Yeah.
don't need to hear from Melissa and Teresa anymore about that situation because it's
Yeah.
overblown.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you show me some, like we talk a lot on our show about the reprieves, like I like to see scenes in which it's the guys doing something innocuous where it's not pertinent to the storyline. It's just a nice little break, especially when the drama is getting so bad. On the other side of that, we really enjoy seeing family scenes. Like when you see the father with the kids and they're all at home and you see like a really nice touching scene, it humanizes these people. And that's really important for the audience, I think, to connect with these cast members because we see so much drama and we hear so many crazy, crazy things that a lot of times you can forget like these are real people going through some actual situations. So I think the husbands, when they're on point, I think they bring a lot of really good things to Jersey. When they overdo it, when they insert themselves too much, when you get, Louis losing his mind, turning red, running around, yelling at people, like that's not fun. I don't need to see that. So just give me like I need a little hint of husbands every now and then,
Yeah.
more for comic relief than I need them for pushing storylines. But I enjoy like I love Frank. I think Frank's great. We had John Food on the show, like he was great.
You
So
did? That's
mhm,
awesome.
Yeah,
yeah.
we did. We had him on during the whole issue with his
Oh
name
yeah.
change and all these his criminal background, and we just let him talk for a little while. We didn't say anything. We really didn't have any opinions on the matter. We're just like, just explain it to us as if we're stupid. Just go through the whole
Okay.
process and tell us where it came from. And we did not, I swear, did not drop one opinion during the entire show. We just reacted to what he said, posted it up, and then you just get the war in the comments.
Oh
And
my
it's
god.
but it's so funny because that's what we're talking about. When we change things from week to week, a lot of people don't. A lot of people are huge fans of Teresa or huge fans of Jen and they or of Melissa, and they're just going to push forward with that narrative no matter what happens. There's never a straw that breaks the camel's back for them. They will support you no matter what. And at
Mm.
the end of the day, we, like Steele said, we like the reprieve. We like to see the husbands out there because it brings a family dynamic, it brings a relationship dynamic. But at the end of the day, it is housewives, and we are still, as guys, still watching for the housewives, not for the house husbands.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that John Fuda
It
episode.
was a good one.
When he came on, did y'all chant Fuda, Fuda?
Food.
Yeah,
No,
I
we
think we did
did
actually,
we
if
do
it wasn't
that? We
recorded.
might.
Yeah.
Oh, we did when we like met with him. But the thing, like with him and what Shooter was saying, we really didn't take any stance. We didn't say we believe you, we don't believe you. We said here's a platform. Explain what's going on.
Mhm.
Regardless of that, the comments were insane. The
I
Jersey
bet.
fan base is like nothing I've ever seen in my life. No matter what you do, they will try to tear you apart and say like, "Oh, you guys are the worst. You're Fuda people or you're Melissa fans. You're getting paid by Joe and Melissa under the table." And we're like, we would take it.
Yeah,
They're
we'll
not
take a
paying us
bribe.
shit, but we're not
Why
above
not?
bribery by any means. Like,
We wish they were paying us. Yeah, that'd be
yeah,
great.
it'd be
Oh,
awesome.
that's crazy. That's crazy. Well, I was gonna ask you if you really are, like, week to week not taking the stand, then, I mean, I was gonna ask your thoughts as straight guys on seeing Louis and his
Oh,
behavior.
well,
I
Well,
it
I mean, yeah,
stance.
we could. He's shown enough of his own behavior that we can take a stand against that because everything that we've seen out of him is insane. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
we can still sit here and say sometimes like we understand Teresa's was really good for the show and she was the show for a long time. It's time to move on. But when you see somebody like Louis jump up there, everything that he does behavioral wise is insane. And you can sit there and say that regardless of how you feel about Teresa, and maybe even a little bit of that saying maybe he's not good for Teresa. Even if you don't like the woman, you can still say Louis is unhinged. He's going to get
Mhm.
her in more trouble than she would even get into herself. And you see it on shows like this in front of cameras. This is how he's acting. What is he doing behind cameras? There's
Right.
no tell what he's getting into. And you hear all the stories coming out from his exes and this and that. And it's like, all right, dude, you've shown this behavior for years now. We are going to start to believe those little stories that pop up on what the Florida Sun or whatever that
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
very credible newspaper was. But no, and that's honestly like the way that we go. But if you show enough behavior, it's not going to change week to week anymore. We're going to have to show at least a full season of good behavior before we try to change on that.
Yeah, and like what Shooter was alluding to before is we have stances. Like we will take stances, we will discuss our stances. We just will not, if we're presented with new information that will alter how we feel about something, then we change
Mhm.
our opinion. Given new
Yeah,
info,
yeah,
given new evidence, we're like, oh, okay, well, we feel this way now. Whereas a lot of the times, especially in the comments, people are ride or die for somebody regardless of their behavior. Then it
yeah,
makes no sense to us. We're like, how can you still be on this person's team when you just watched that episode? They
Yeah.
were horrible. Like we're not going to stand by
yeah.
that behavior. It's awful. So that's our stance.
Yeah, that's how I feel about what's happening with Bethany because I was ride or die. Like, Bethany could do no wrong. She's so funny. She's one of the top 3 housewives ever. Don't ask me the other 2. I don't know. But she's just so great. And she has become so unhinged on social media that I'm like, girl, this is a quit while you're ahead. This is like cash in your chips situation. Like, listen, during COVID and stuff, I was loving her makeup tutorials. I was like, buy this, don't buy that. Okay, great. Like, I was all in on that with her trying to be like the everyman. And now she's gone so nuts. And listen, and I'm not talking about the reality reckoning and all that because whatever. I'm talking about her trying to go to TJ Maxx and giving a woman that works there her old makeup. Like, nobody wants your old makeup. That's so
No.
insulting.
We
And
had
just
a
doing things like that are just like, oh God, oh, it's so bad. It makes me so upset because I loved her so much.
It's funny you said that. We had an episode and we were discussing the crab leg video when she was in the
Yeah,
hotel room, like eating crab legs.
yeah.
And we simply said, like, we don't want to watch any human being, man, woman, nobody. We don't want to see anybody eating crab legs that close to a camera in that lighting, period. It's just like nobody wants to watch
No, and you
people
get the
eat crab.
sounds that come into it too. It was just
Yeah.
it was disgusting. I couldn't even focus on what she was saying. All I could hear was the licking and the like slurping noises that were popping up there with the crab legs and focusing on where the hell are those juices going. Then I start thinking who's going to be sleeping in that bed next when she goes out of that hotel. There's no way they're going to be able to clean that crab residue from everywhere. There's debris everywhere. It's disgusting.
Gross.
And then somebody comments on it and says, "Did you guys even listen to what she was saying?" No, I didn't.
No.
I have no idea what she was saying during that scene and I never will because I will not subject myself to watching that video ever again.
But we caught a lot of shit in the comments because people were saying a similar thing that you're saying, where it's like Bethany is the best housewife of all time. You guys don't know what you're talking about. Like, this video is stupid, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward like 3 or 4 months, and she starts dropping 6 TikToks a day, and they're getting more and more erratic. A lot of
Yes.
people actually came back to that video and said, you guys were right. And we're like, because all we said
Thank
in the
you.
video was like, can somebody please pause this woman's Instagram account? We don't need to see this shit anymore. And then everyone's like, you can't pause her account. And we're like, well, obviously not. We're not being serious here. Like, we don't have the power to pause anybody's account. We're just saying, like, somebody please, like, let her know this is getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
Fast forward, and she is getting really ridiculous. And now people are like, "Oh, you guys are right." And we're like, "Yeah, we know, but
Yeah.
we're not."
We'll take the credit,
We'll take
honestly.
the credit.
It doesn't matter if it's 4 months later and you
Oh,
already said that we
whatever.
were wrong, but it's fine.
Yeah, it's just like it's like you're right. Somebody needs to take away your social media for like a month and let her kind of do a reset,
It's like a
and let's go
timeout.
back. Yeah, let's go back to sitting in your closet and talking about buy this, not that on your makeup because I enjoyed that. So back to Roni. I mean, I guess we're talking Roni if we're talking Bethany, and about Jessel. I think it's interesting that I think it has kind of been a turnaround with Jessel because I think people are seeing what you're saying is like, all right, she did volunteer the information about she and her husband not having sex, but they've gotten so invested and so mean girl about it. It's like she told you something sort of like vulnerable. And then it's like, then they tell their husbands who then are around Pavitt and calling him like blue balls and all this stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, okay. And I don't know. I feel like they're kind of ganging up on her. And I feel like she's a little Jessel, a little awkward and maybe is just finding her footing. But when she said, when they were in Anguilla and she said she had a Google Doc on her phone, she was keeping track of all the mean things they said and then comebacks. I was like, oh, this is a girl who's writing her confessionals and she's writing her reunion comebacks. Do you know what I
That's
mean?
a good
She's like,
point.
yeah, I think she's like, I'm not going to forget when she said this. I'm going to write it in my Google Doc on my phone. So then when it's brought back up in a confessional in the reunion, this is what I should have said, you know?
Yeah. No, I
Eh,
think that we said something similar, actually. We alluded to her being the type of person that goes into the shower 20 minutes after the argument and it reenacts the argument with herself. And like, ah, man, I could have had her here. I could have had her there. And
Yeah,
people do that all the time. Honestly, I've
I
done
do
it
that.
before.
Yeah, I do
It
that.
happens. But I do think that what you said, where they're ganging up on her, it's getting worse and worse every week. It
mhm.
doesn't matter what the subject material is. Like she, like you said, opened up and showed a little vulnerability to these women that she doesn't really know that well. They've just met in this last year. She's telling them pretty intricate details about her relationship, and they went off on her and they were so meddling in everything that she was doing. And look, maybe the byproduct from that is they did get a night out. They did at least go out and kind of tackle that for what it's worth. But now they're
Yeah,
coming back and now they're all about his trip to Thailand. And look, do we think that the trip to Thailand's a little weird? Sure, but it doesn't need to be analyzed at such like a microscopic level that everybody needs to get in on it. It's okay if one person has a question about it. Once she answers the question, shut it down. Who cares? It's not important. And one of the things that we loved about this show was they would get into petty fights and then it would end and there would be a resolution that we could see on screen. Now
right.
we're starting to see that they're getting into these weird fights that nobody cares about. Like no one is online right now talking about Pavitt's trip to Thailand. Nobody's online right now talking about Pavitt and Jessel's sex life. They're kind of tired of it and they don't really want to watch it anymore. So I don't want to get them bogged down and have them go through this week to week to week. Get us some new material, new fights, new organic issues, arguments, whatever you might have, and let's move forward. I don't want to be stuck in this because nobody cares.
Yeah, I think that okay, first of all, it was Vietnam. Just gonna correct you. It
Oh,
was
right, right,
Vietnam.
right.
And I think when they all went out as a big group to the golf or whatever, and he explained it, like, have you ever been, in an international first class? Like, yeah, it's just you're spending time in the air, you land, you hang out for 12 hours, you go back in the air and you go back home. And yeah, why not? Why not? Because he goes, it was a $15,000 ticket that was $900. And when he explained it, I was like, okay, I mean, that's like a rich person thing, and that's kinda cool. Like, he explained it, and I understood it, and then they're still like, "Really? Really?" I was like, "Just let him go," and I think of the Jessel and the 2 of them being like and especially Jessel was like, "He's my best friend. We were best friends for years, then we turned it into a relationship, now we're parents, now we're married, like, quit talking about him." Like and also if he was doing something super shady, I don't think he would be so detailed and so, like, telling about it. He's like, "Y'all are the ones that are dumb. I'm the one that get 60,000 miles," you
Right.
know?
Interesting you said that because whenever it was brought up originally, like it was just a quick one-off in the episode, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. They hadn't dove into what the Vietnam trip was yet.
Yeah.
Somebody left a comment on one of our YouTube videos saying, "Oh, he must be doing a mileage run." And this is
Mhm.
before he mentioned the miles. And I was
Yeah.
like, "What is that?" And they responded, they said, "Oh, if you book a international flight like to Vietnam for a cheap amount of money, like $900 for a ticket like that, you can rack up so many miles on that one trip that you can then pay for tickets for the rest of the year." So a
Yeah.
lot of people, I guess, they do this. So I saw that originally. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think that much of it. But then when he mentioned it on the show, I was like, oh, well, that seems kind of reasonable then. If he just does this and it's also a chance for him to get away, he's on
Mhm.
an airplane, he lands, he has a banh mi or whatever, he hops back on the plane and he flies back.
Yeah.
Like Shooter said, is it a little strange? Sure, but maybe that's because we don't understand it. And this is their dynamic, I guess, in their relationship. And for all intents and purposes, when you see these two interact together, they seem like they're genuinely friends. They seem like they're genuinely like trusting one another and that
Mhm.
they're okay with each other. So for this crew to like constantly try to dive into all of this and try to pick them apart for all these things, it seems to me like they're deflecting or they're just trying to gang up on her because we always say that we fall into housewife tropes and especially with new housewives trying to
Mm.
make a name for themselves.
Mhm.
I think this group has seen Jessel as the weak one and they're piling on like, oh, we can make this really good. And I think that during the season, they think they're coming out on top right now because they're not watching it back to where we're all watching it going, wow, leave her the fuck alone. This is getting too much. It's not fun to watch. You're making her cry. Meanwhile, her and Pavitt seem fine. They seem better than you and your scummy husbands. Like David's hitting on Uba like relentlessly. Like you're so pretty and smart. And but it's like, all right, dude, settle the fuck down. Your wife's sitting
Yeah.
next to you.
Yeah.
And then you got Aaron. And I'm 100% convinced after the swingers conversation they had at the dinner last week, then they take everybody to a place called Swingers. And the
Mhm.
first conversation that they have together when no one else is there is about Aaron giving Abe a blowjob. I'm 100% convinced that Abe and Aaron are screening David and Cy as their next swinging partner. This is just a fucking interview so that they can all hook up. I'm like, I am convinced of it.
There you
So
go. That's a fresh hot take. I
yeah,
haven't
there's
even
my
heard
hot
that one
take.
yet.
That's mine.
Well, I mean, they said like, yeah, I mean, one day, I mean, we could be into it one day. I mean, why not? And I was like, well, this is something interesting to bring up on camera in front of the world,
That's
because
Yeah.
right.
Aaron seems pretty proper, and it seems literally, I mean, now that you're saying it, I completely even forgot about it because I was like, well, this is dumb. They're just like being drunk and trying to be funny because Aaron is so like prim and proper. I can't
You
even, but
see
yeah, I
the
guess you
evidence,
never know.
though. Evidence is
Yeah.
piling up. That's
Mhm.
all I'm saying.
Well, that would assure they'd both get next season, I guess, if they were,
Yeah.
yeah, swapping
Uh-huh.
it up. All right, I want to talk about, let's talk about Salt Lake City. So, Salt Lake City, I'm loving this season so far. I'm loving the return of Pastor Mary and her hot takes. And just she's so fucking mean and she does not care. She doesn't care. She's like, I heard, okay, and I've said this before on the podcast. So I heard on Andy's radio show, somebody called in and they're like, how come Mary got to come back? Because isn't the rule like if you don't go to the reunion, you're fired? And he goes, I think she was fired for one season and now she's back. And they're like, okay. And then they said, but it's interesting that she's there, but she refuses to participate in everything, which will make the other ladies hate you. Right, because
Yeah.
you like I've got to go and put on this dumb outfit and participate, and now you don't. And he said, "Yeah, she doesn't participate the whole season." So he was like not happy with the return of Mary, but she does bring so much comedic effect because she's so hateful. She's
Mhm.
so hateful. She's the most hateful pastor you've ever seen in your life. I know
Easily.
what
I really
thoughts.
enjoy her. I enjoy her a lot for what she brings. She's a friend
Yeah.
of. I don't care if she's not participating in the trust fall. She's sitting on the bus. She goes to get food. She comes back. She has a bunch of mean comments. She's not going to bring a whole lot out there in the trust fall scenario. I don't care that she's not participating in the drag show. It just none of those things really matter to me. Mary is in her truest form when she shows up a little bit late, has something to say about another woman's dress or whatever she's wearing, her jewelry with Heather last week, which is hilarious. I want to see
Hilarious.
more and more of that. I don't need her to be participating in everything. I need her for exactly what you said, just a little bit of comedic relief because tensions do run a little high in that group sometimes. We finally have Heather kind of returning to form, not getting mixing everything up and getting involved in some stupid black eye story that we don't care about anymore. She's found her form. And we have Mary in there to just give a little bit of comedic relief on the side. That's all we really want from her. I don't need a whole lot more from her. And Steele wants a little bit more, so he's going to go on a little bit. But look, I get it why Andy's a little pissed off, but I feel like the majority of people watching, I don't need to see her, her home life all the time. I don't need a big story with Mary going on. I just need her there to make a couple of jokes.
My stance
Mm.
on it is I need her there. I don't need her mixing it up all the time. I don't need her chiming in all the time. Her one-offs are perfect. They're so funny. They're so mean, and the timing of them is great. I just need her present in the room. Like when she wasn't at the bar, when she went to McDonald's on the bus, like that I
Yeah.
don't need. I need her at the bar so that out of left field, she can come in and say some off the wall shit. That's what I want from her. And I think that we get that from her for the most part. Again, the only time I want to see like what Mary's up to is when she's at her church. Like that church is so interesting to me. And we hesitate calling it a cult just in case any of the members of her church are listening and we don't want them to come after us. But I want to see some of that maybe, but as far as what Mary brings to the show, like she is perfect in the role that she's in. She just needs to participate in going. Like she needs to go to the event. She doesn't have to do the event, but just be there so
Just
that
be
you can,
present.
yeah. So then you
Yeah.
can comment on it. So you can sit there and say that Whitney looks cheap. And Heather, did you pick out that necklace yourself? And she's like, yeah. And the best part about that was Heather knew exactly what Mary was doing. She's like,
Hmm.
yes, I did. It brings out the champagne in my jacket. It complements my earrings. And I absolutely love this necklace. And she's like, really? You do? Like, even after Heather's like, it's my favorite thing, Mary
Yeah.
still shits on it. And that's funny. So, like,
Yeah.
I think that it's perfect. And I think that, as Shooter said, it's a return to form for the entire show because last year was such a drag. And it was such a
Mm.
bummer because I loved Salt Lake from season one. I watched it before we started doing the podcast. My wife and I would watch Salt Lake, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved Heather so much until last year. So to see her come back and take over that role of what she did year one and two, which is just funny comments, being kind of in the background, not taking center stage. That's
Yeah.
perfect for her. Mary's perfect in the role that she's in. We don't want more from her because I think it's going to get too erratic. It'll be too hard to follow if she takes a main storyline. So I
Yeah.
think they're
Right.
doing a great job, and I'm excited for this season to continue. Like we've thoroughly enjoyed the entire season thus far.
Yeah.
I think that in for her to come back, I think somehow or another she has gotten it said that her church and her marriage to her step grandfather will not be brought up. And
Right.
I just listened to the Bravo docket ladies. They just put out they put out again. They had put it out before. They re-put it out. They reissued it. That's the word I'm looking for.
There you go.
There, one or two episodes they had on Mary and her mom and her dead grandma and her step granddad and that whole thing and all the lawsuits and things. It's so fascinating and it's so deep and so dark.
I
And so,
know.
for her just to come in like an easy breezy, I, yeah, it's dark. It's real dark.
There's so
Now,
much more there, right? Like I want to
right.
know.
It's a Hulu documentary waiting to happen. Why
Oh,
why
for
Yeah.
haven't we
sure.
gotten it? Why I mean
But
we got Erica and we got Jen Shaw. Why not Mary? Yeah.
I think it'll come out, and it's like only with Mary. And again, this is where she is at her best. Like what I think it was 2 years ago, she comes into Whitney's house, and she just out of nowhere is like, "Oh my god, a member of my church last night drove off the road into a neighborhood." And Whitney's like, "Oh my god, are they okay?" She's like, "No, they're dead." And then next scene, and like she doesn't even, she just shows no emotion. She then
Mm-mm.
looks at the kids and is like, "Hey, how are you guys?" And it's like, "Whoa, wait a minute,
No,
somebody just died
she
from your
raised her
flock."
arms. She raised her arm and goes, "Well, I'm here to have fun."
Yeah,
Woo!
like what the
Yeah.
fuck? Like
Yeah.
that, you
Yeah.
cannot make that shit up. That is gold TV. So if she has a couple of dud episodes, but then drops a one liner like that, money well spent.
Yeah, I agree. And her son lives in the house with her and she heard he was married, but she doesn't know.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
She hasn't
She
seen
hadn't
her husband
bothered
in
to
6
ask.
months. He's been in
Yeah.
Vegas. How do you feel about that? Oh, it's fine.
Yeah,
Like
It's
whatever.
it's all right.
she's just so weird. So, all right, now I want to ask you guys about OC. Okay, so we're filming filming. We are recording this a couple of days early, guys. So the OC part 2 will be out, but we haven't seen it yet. So we're going to talk about the reunion part 1. First of all, Shannon's get up. What? Because it's not an outfit. That was a get up. What did you think about her get up?
He's our fashion
Yeah,
guy.
I'm the fashion expert on the show.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely. I feel like I think her fashion choice was indicative of how the entire show went this season. And the
Mhm.
best way to do that is one word: train wreck. An absolute train wreck of an outfit and an absolute train wreck of a season. It was, Steele and I had to watch this, and it was excruciating at moments
Hmm.
because we just didn't care. We could tell that none of these women really care about each other. They're just putting on a
Mm.
show. Tamara's trying insanely too hard. It's tough to watch, and we, for one, cannot wait until the show is over.
Hey, y'all. I do love to cover drama and I love to talk about it on this podcast, but a place that you don't want drama is your kitchen table at dinner time or lunchtime. That's why I love Little Spoon. I've told you guys that I so wish Little Spoon was around when my kids were little. It would have saved me so much heartache. Little Spoon is the one-stop shop for healthy, easy mealtime and snack time for your baby, toddler, and your big kid, and it's delivered right to your door. That's right, you can have Little Spoon in your life for years, making the mealtime healthy, tasty, and easy from the little bitty babies all the way up to the big kids. Little Spoon delivers. They have the baby blends, the biteables, the plates. They have lunchers. You have to think about like old school favorites with the new school standards. Brand new lunchers are healthier and they're build it yourself lunches, flavors and imaginative build it yourself meals that your big kid will love, like easy cheesy pizza, yum, chicken dunkers, yum, chicken nacho dips, yum, all made junk free and have 10 grams of protein, which is super important, as you know, on those busy school days. They also have some new things in their snacks. They have dipsters. You guys, nobody loves a dip more than me. They have these new offerings, brownie batter plus cookies. Oh my gosh, so good. Confetti cake and pretzels. They have these veggie loops, fruit rippers, oat bakes, and then the smoothies. Yum. So, like I said, sweet baby James, my nephew's son, tried so many of these things. He loved everything he tried. They were so happy because it came right to the door. That's great for grandma, which in this case is my sister, and great for parents as well. So make this year's chaos a little more manageable with time-saving, delicious, and healthy meals and snacks your kids will love. Go to littlespoon.com/pinkshade and enter our code pinkshade at checkout to get 30% off your first Little Spoon order. That's littlespoon.com/pinkshade and enter our code pinkshade and you'll get 30% off at checkout. Okay, now I don't feel that way. I felt
Oh,
that
all right.
We're so sorry.
it's okay. We can disagree. I liked the new girl, new Jen, as we're calling
We
her,
like
new
Jen.
Jen,
We like Jen.
who looked like old Jen, but it's new Jen.
Right.
And I like her, and I like how she's like, I'm with this guy that's not only shooter. Speaking of fashion, not only horribly dressed, this guy,
Yeah.
but also just obviously a horrible cheater of a guy. And I know that I am. And all of you can fuck off. Like, who cares? Like, let me live. Let me live. She's just like, I know it. He knows it. All of you know it. So it's none of your business. I'm choosing to stay with him. Like,
Yep.
whatever,
That was kind of our issue with the season. That was one of the biggest issues was at some point, if you need to question her originally and say, "Hey," and we love that we really like Jen for the majority of
Hmm.
the season, and we knew what she was doing in episode 1. Like she brought it up immediately because she knew this would bite her in the ass. She was like, "Yes, I had an affair. It was an emotional affair, but I had an affair. My husband and I are divorced. I'm now with Ryan, who was the guy." Like she tried to get on top of it, so respect to her there. It didn't work out how she wanted it to, clearly. But after the group like comes to Jen and says, "Hey, are you sure about this?" Tamara, her quote unquote friend,
Hmm.
not at all. But when she comes to Jen and says, "Hey, I'm worried about this. I think that he's going to cheat on you again. Like he already stepped out on you when you guys took a break. He Ross and Rachel'd you a little bit."
Right.
After you ask and everybody in the group chimes in and gives their opinion, at that point she is an adult. She can make her own decisions. As a friend, if you actually are her friend, you need to stand by her decision. Say, "Hey, I've got your back no matter what. If this does fall apart, I'm here, but for the
Yeah.
time being I support you," because that's what friends do. Instead, everybody goes after her nonstop, and when I'm watching it for the 5th episode in a row, it's the same shit again. It gets so tired and it's just not good TV. We were not entertained by it. We felt terrible for Jen because she had so much ammo to go back after Tamara. She could have raised hell and caused a huge scene, but she holds her own consistently. She just kind of
Yeah.
bites the bullet, bites her tongue, and tries to take the high road. And it just sucked to watch. And then you got Shannon, who's throwing rocks everywhere in her giant glass house, and that makes no sense to it. The whole thing was just kind of frustrating, I think, because so many of the women get on so many of the other women for the same exact shit that they're doing. And it
Hmm.
just got really tired to watch. And Heather in the beginning of the season, we didn't love. Then we saw the witch hunt in Mexico for
Mm.
4 days where they're just
Yeah.
constantly trying to find reasons to tear her down. It's like, of course she's not going to tell you about her house because all of you are assholes to her and you're just jealous of Heather Dubrow and it's coming out clearly. So as far as Jen goes, I did like Jen. Jen was great, and we talked about who we would bring back if we did bring the show back. Jen would be one of them. Heather would be one
Mm-hmm.
of them, or send Heather to Beverly Hills.
Right.
But it just that's where it fell short for us, is we felt like it was just repeating the same exact formula each episode, and it just was not working for us.
I did like at the reunion though, where Gina really sort of held her own against this, Tamara trying to come at her and Shannon
Yeah.
trying to come at her. And Gina's like, no, do you even know my kids' names? No. Now it's like, look, you could throw out like Cruz or Rio and you could have been right
Yeah.
because almost all the kids on the
Is
show are
that
named,
true?
but she just went, that could have been
Tucker.
one of their kids. That could have been one of their names. It could have been.
That's it. It's a really good point, and that was one of the frustrating aspects. Was I feel like the reunion was it was a lot different than the way that the season went, and it was because of their motives. And you could tell pretty much the entire season, Gina was not really sticking up for any of her friends. She was just trying to kind of like kiss up to whether it was Heather, whether it was Tamara, whether it was Shannon. She was never really ruffling any feathers. Anytime that she had a one-on-one scene, she was always being nice, unless somebody questioned something that she was doing. Obviously, when Shannon was talking about the DUI, and then obviously the CPA for the kids, or whatever it is, yeah,
Yes.
CPS for the kids. But she, in the reunion, I felt kind of drew her line in the sand where she was defending Heather. And she was, the entire time that people were going after Heather, she was the shoulder to cry on for Heather. She was reaching out and touching her hand and making sure that she was okay. And then she went after Shannon. So I feel like she finally drew up her allegiances, which, like it or not, that's how housewife shows go. There's never a time where it's every single one of them on their own. There's always groupings. There's always some sort of party going against another person. And yes, they do gang up on the weakest link sometimes, but you do need to stand pat and you do need allies. And finally, she got an ally and she stand pat with Heather and finally went after them. And I feel like that's kind of extending a bit to Jen, unfortunately. And look, the next season could be better. If they don't make any changes, I would at least like to see less picking on one person, Jen, less picking on one person, Heather, and more of like a team battle where people actually have each other's backs, because that was our biggest issue about the entire season. They were not helping each other out. It was just one person left out by themselves to defend themselves, and it's not fun. I don't like to see bullying in real life or on TV. It's just not an enjoyable experience for anyone. And I can't imagine that anybody in this show, whether it be Tamara or Shannon, looks back on the season and says, wow, that was a really good season. Those storylines were awesome. People are going to love this. The viewers are going to eat that up. They're not. It's just, we get tired of things. We have short attention spans. We do not want to watch the same argument 5 times in a row. We're going to get tired of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, those are good points. And I think that lots of people were calling for, Gina to go. And then I will tell you, my theory, my opinion is that Shannon got the DUI, after the season wrapped, after the reunion and everything. And then, of course, she had been harping on Gina about that the whole season, bringing up the one nice thing she ever did with her when she helped her get the lawyer. And then she was like taking it 2 steps further, saying the thing about CPS. And of course, she didn't remember that she said these things. So she couldn't even apologize. But so I think with this turnaround, with what has happened in the off season with Shannon, I think that buys Gina another season because now she really has something to talk about. Like,
Right.
okay, Shannon, remember what you said to me all last year? Now, don't you wish that I would give you some grace? Like, you didn't give me any grace, you
But
know?
will Shannon come back?
Yes, she
Because
needs the
you think
money.
so? I just can't imagine that show is good for her
Well,
mental health.
she's
It's
going on the
not.
she's going on the Trace Amigas tour still, even
She's,
though
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
And
she's
the
doing
whole thing is
outpatient
about
rehab.
the whole thing is about she's doing listen, I know about treatment. My husband is going on, well, 9.5 years sober.
I got
So
5.
good, good. See, so I get it when somebody was like, "Oh, she's doing this outpatient." I go, "It's called IOP,
Mhm.
and it can be very effective." But I think that I don't listen. I'm not a doctor. I don't know, but it just seems to me if you're doing something like an IOP, you really need to be doing it 5 days a week. Like you really need to
Mhm.
be on it. And if you're traveling and your whole entire show that you're doing is about tequila shots and all this, like, is that good for your sobriety or? Are you gonna be like Luann and be sober for a while for the court and then not, and then realize, "Actually, I probably should have been sober?" Is that gonna be the journey we're gonna go on with Shannon?
As
And
the
that is interesting in some ways, actually, you
Mhm.
it
know?
is. And as the resident recovering alcoholic here, when I read that, that's the first thing I thought. IOP is already not nearly as successful as inpatient, and inpatient in
Yep.
itself. The first thing when I got to Karen in Pennsylvania, the first thing they said to us is 7% of you are going to be successful. Like, they don't sugarcoat it. They're like 7% of you are going to remain sober after this, and that's the
Mhm.
number. And for IOP, it's even less. So when I read that, I was a little upset. I was kind of bummed out. I even made a video when Shannon got the DUI that it's a horrible thing, yes, and it could have ended a lot worse than it did if she had hit somebody and killed somebody, for sure.
Yeah, of
However,
course.
if she is an active alcoholic, which I do believe she is, and I don't make that claim ever. It's not my place to say for anybody, but given the behaviors we've seen coupled with the DUI, I think it's fairly obvious, especially now that she's going to IOP. I was asking, I understand there's two sides to it. You don't have to give her grace. If you're mad, if you think that it was a disgusting thing, that's your prerogative, right? I'm not here to tell you how to feel about anything when it comes to addiction and substance abuse. However, having gone through severe alcoholism and getting past it and getting through it, I was asking for people to try to give her grace here and understand that when you're going through active alcoholism, you're not making cognitive decisions. You're not making smart decisions. You're overriding the prefrontal cortex in your brain, literally, and going with the sex, drugs, rock and roll part of your brain, saying fuck it. So I was
Mhm.
saying, like, if she can get this right, we might actually get to see who the real Shannon is, who is free and clear of alcohol and sober. And I was hoping that she would take the chance to go to inpatient and really give this a shot and try to get clean. Instead, you have people going up to bat for her saying, oh, well, she's not an alcoholic. And it's like, well, don't do that, because now you're enabling her and now you're giving her an out. And then you have
You
the
also
Trace
don't
Amigas tour.
don't you don't know if she's an alcoholic, and we don't
Right.
know if
Exactly.
she has struggled in the past and tried to stop in the past, and we don't know any of
There's
that.
so many ins and outs to it, right? There's so many facets that we're not aware of. So, for the very least, going on a tour with two women who are promoting tequila, two women who are promoting partying and drinking. I'm not here to say that they can't go on the tour, but for Shannon, for your children, for your family, like, would it not be better to take the time, maybe 2 or 3 months, and really give this a shot? Try to figure your shit out so that you can be better for those around you. I just,
Mhm.
it really actually upset me genuinely when I saw that she was still going on the tour, because I think it negates any kind of grace that people have given her. Because clearly, when I see that, it's like, oh, you're not taking this seriously.
Yeah, and I think courts aren't gonna take it seriously as
Right.
well. I mean,
Yeah.
they can frame it like, like Luann did her cabaret, but she ended up, relapsing during that. But, you have to frame it like, "Well, this is my job and I have to work and it's already booked." But I think that's listen, I don't know, but I think it's the kind of thing where like, okay, well, you could have pushed it out like 6 months and then
Right.
done
Mhm.
it once you're in a better headspace. Right now, her main focus needs to be like doing what she needs to do for the court so she doesn't, like, wind up in jail, you know?
Right.
Yeah, and you got to
So
look at Tamara and Vicky too. They're not willing to push it 6 months for Shannon. We're not seeing a whole lot of any sort of dialogue from Tamara or Vicky talking about, well, we want Shannon to do what's best for her, and we want to make sure that we give her the space and time to figure out what she's going through and try to be a better version of herself. Try to figure out what she can do differently in her life so that she
yeah,
has a little bit of a better perspective. We're not hearing any of that. Instead, we're just Trace Amigas tour is right back on. We're still going to be whooping it up down there and whipping down tequila shots, and Shannon's going to be standing over here awkwardly. And look, maybe she goes into this, and we kind of hope that she does. Hopefully, she goes into this and she obviously does not relapse. She doesn't drink the entire time. She takes her outpatient very seriously and gets through all of this. And you can look back and say, wow, that was really strong of me to get through all of that. But
yeah.
when you look at it as friends and people that are supposed to be close to you and have your best interest in mind, immediately that should be the decision. We're going to push it a little bit until you figure things out. No, we're going to go right on tour because this is what we have scheduled. It's just kind of crappy to watch.
Yeah. It'll be very, very interesting to see kind of in the off season rolling back into the new season how it all plays out. And I 100% think she's going to be back on the show. I think she's I don't see any world where she would voluntarily leave the show because this is her
This is
income.
all she has left. Yeah.
This is her income. I mean,
Hmm.
she didn't have like a full-time job before. She, got married to David kind of young. They had kids and then divorced, and this has been her income. So
Hmm.
I don't think her selling her lemon tincture and her frozen fish on QVC is paying the bills.
What about
Probably.
the Sidolonic?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. I was like, looking
You're
at that,
lucky
and
you
I'm
forgot
like,
about that.
so you sit on it, and
Nope.
no, nope,
No.
nope, nope. Oh my god, totally forgot.
Unfortunately,
And then,
You're
okay,
welcome.
okay, okay. Oh
Happy
god,
to remind you.
I gotta eat dinner after this. Gross.
Good luck.
Oh my god. Well, let me ask you guys your opinions on Southern Charm.
Oh,
Okay, are you
all
watching
right.
Southern Charm?
we are.
Yeah,
We definitely are.
that was a shooter favorite
Yep.
early on. I hated it. I hated it for a very long time, and I watched it all last year. In the first like 4 or 5 episodes, I was like, "This is why I hate it. I don't like these kinds of people. They drive me crazy." What I was doing is I was watching it wrong. I was watching it
Oh,
wrong. I was expecting too much out of these people. I had to learn, like, kind of get in touch with who they all are. This
hmm,
season, I love. I think it's amazing. I love the characters. I love the cast. Like, I hated Whitney and Patricia so much, and now I love Whitney and Patricia. Like, I've completely 180'd, and I think it's because, like, once you get used to the Charleston, like, aristocratic lifestyle and the socialite and, like, all of that scene and what everybody's goal is and what they're trying to do, then I was like, okay, I was taking it way too seriously and too literal. I needed to lighten up a little bit, and I did.
huh?
And it was a lot of pushing by Shooter to get there. And because he kept saying, "Dude, you're gonna love this show," and I was like, "I really don't. I really, really don't." And I hate Shep, and I want to punch him in the face, but I still kind of want to do that. But I have learned to love the show. I appreciate the characters for who they are. I actually, a lot of the times, really enjoy watching like Austin and Craig on the show just because it's like two bros like me and this idiot right here, like doing
Yeah,
stupid shit together. And
yeah,
there's a lot of things that I finally learned to love about it. So this season in particular, I think is great. Like I'm looking forward to each episode. This last week was a little slower than it has been. They kind of just kept talking about the same thing over and over again. But
yeah,
all in all, I think it's a great season this year. I thought last year was pretty solid as well. And like, there's something about Charleston that's like so quaint and just fun to watch for some reason. Like, I just kind of fall into that vibe when I'm watching the show. So I've learned to love it, but it was a long, arduous road.
It was. It really was. And I knew that he was going to hate Shep immediately. And this
Me
was
too.
one of my, when I got into Bravo, I started with Summer House and Southern Charm because those are the two shows that I felt like I could connect with anybody on the show. And I quickly realized I'm not inserting myself into this group of friends. I don't have to hang out with Shep and Austin and Craig all the time and hear them talk. I just get to watch them once a week for a couple of weeks a year. That's fine by me because they are sometimes lovable, but most of the times not lovable idiots. And you
mhm,
get to watch all of those things unfold. And we talked about it earlier with the husbands on housewife shows. This is where you get your fill of the men on Bravo. You get it from Summer House, you get it from Southern Charm. And
yeah,
these guys mix themselves into all of the drama. If you think back for the last couple of seasons, most of the drama comes from the guys, not
Dude
from the girls
centric.
on the show. It's very dude centric. So we're seeing things unfold and it's really funny to watch like the overlap and speculate. And Steele and I looked at it last year and said, I don't like Austin and Taylor hanging out together. That whole brother sister bullshit is going to come back. They're absolutely going to hook up at some point in time. Nobody gets that close and doesn't show any sort of emotion to each other, especially when you're doing something like that. And especially in Charleston, of all places, where we're constantly reminded it's a very small town. People date each other's exes, and this is what's going to happen. We get
yeah,
that thrown in our face all the time. Obviously, it's not this close to home, but I'm really enjoying this season, especially, and I'm happy that now Steele's finally on board because we can have positive conversations about it, where I'm not defending the show and telling him, dude, it doesn't matter that Shep's an idiot. You're not going to ever punch him in the face. You're not going to punch Austin. I think it helps a little bit because you get to see Austin. We saw Austin on Summer House last year and Winter House for those shows. Austin's a completely different person when he comes back to Charleston. He is friends with all these guys. They've known each other for so long that you get like an actual friendship on this show. And they do want to punch each other in the face sometimes, but a lot of times they'll have a beer afterwards. And it's fun to watch and it's a good show to throw on for entertainment.
I think that was a big part. Was I met like Craig and Austin through Summer House and Winter House, and I was like, these guys are awful. Like they came into the house and just partied their face off and caused so much shit, and they're such assholes to everybody. But when I saw them in their element, Craig seems like a sweet dude a lot of the time, and I felt really bad for him when Naomi like flashback to her picking up. I bring this up all the time because
Hmm.
it drives me nuts. he was sewing in his living room and Naomi like shits on him for it. I was like, that's so mean. This man's passionate about sewing. Like, who cares? Why are you going to tell him like, oh, that's not manly or whatever the fuck Naomi was saying? Like,
Yeah.
that's such a rude thing to say. Like, this man likes to sew. Let him sew. And for him to take that and turn it
He
into,
was also lying all the time.
Yeah, he was lying
He
about the whole
he
like,
kind of he
passing
kind
the
of
buck,
lied.
and yeah,
He
yeah,
kind of
passing
lied
the
about
buck.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
he
telling you
lied
for,
about everything. Yeah.
well,
yeah.
I'm talking strictly about the sewing part.
Okay. All right.
And sewing down south. I just thought that was a cool comeuppance for him, like a little like throw it in Naomi's face a little bit for him to take that into a successful company. And then I'm not saying that these guys are great guys. I'm saying that seeing them in their element on Southern Charm versus when they're implants on other shows has been
Mm,
a lot more fun to watch for me than seeing them more comfortable and know the people around them. They don't come off quite as harsh as they did when they were on like the summer houses, the winter houses, like those kinds of shows. So that made me enjoy it
yeah.
more.
I'm not a summer Winter House gal, but I think that this year I am going to watch Winter House just because we've got Schwartz on there and Brian
Hmm.
Benny from Family Karma. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to watch it and see what it's about. But what's interesting is if you go to BravoCon this year, you will see Shep because I saw him last year in a bar where he kind of groped me and almost laid right on top of me. And I'm a 54-year-old lady, but so he's pretty right on the nose when you meet him in person. You
Not
just
shocking at all.
Yeah, not
couldn't
surprised at all.
be couldn't be shocked at all by his behavior. And I did meet Craig as well. He was in town for a Sewing Down South pillow party,
Oh,
and then my daughter's one of her best friends from high school is like his cousin. So it was sort of like a double whammy. So when I met him, I was telling the thing about the cousin and stuff. And, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We were chatting, and then I go, okay, we're gonna do a. His manager guy like took the phone and was like, okay, to do a picture. I go, we're gonna do a boomerang. Right. Like we're
Mhm.
gonna do a boomerang. And he goes, okay, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna jump up and down? Are we gonna shake? Like
Oh, cool.
he was like giving me hints. And I was
I
like,
like that.
yeah.
well, I didn't think about the up and down. He was like, ah, you should go up and down, not side to side. I was like, okay, let's do it. So he was like, and he had been standing there with all those people for hours.
See, I
Right.
like that. I
And
like
he
that.
was like super, super nice and didn't
Yeah.
seem weird or on Adderall or anything or, whatever he said.
You know who
Yeah.
Um,
else? Chris Bassett did a live show with us in Philly.
mhm.
And after the show, after his part in the show and before the show, he hung out and talked to everybody there. And he was so nice and pleasant to all the fans, all the listeners. Like he took the time to have full blown conversations with everyone there. So when I see any Bravo personality that like takes the time to appreciate that these people are the reason that you're famous and
Yeah.
that you're on TV, and they take
Yeah.
the time to just give them the time of day, like being polite to you and saying, yeah, let's jump up and down. This, like, it goes so much further than they know, I think.
Yeah.
And, we've had experiences with some, I'm just going to say it. Dorinda was like very standoffish. She did a live show with us as well. And like, it was not the same vibe. And it's always interesting to see who is actually cool in real life and who is just playing it up for the TV. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that Craig was cool in person. That makes me happy.
That's interesting. So my listeners know this. I used to work in the same building with Chris Bassett. And when at Myra Mixon's barbecue, where he was the manager, not the owner.
Mhm.
And anyway, I was sitting at home watching when Real Housewives of Potomac aired for the first time. I was like, oh, it's
Oh,
a new
interesting.
show and it's here in this area, so I'll watch it. I'm sitting watching and I was like, huh, oh wow, they're at Fachaluna or Southside, which is right down literally I could walk right down the street. I go, oh,
Mhm.
that's crazy. That's where they are. Now, it must have been it was Southside. So Southside Fachaluna and Myron Mixon's, where Chris was the manager, are all owned by the same restaurant group. So that's why they were in there. I didn't know that at the time. So I'm watching it and I'm like, huh, oh, okay, here's this new girl. Her name was Candace. And I was like, oh my God, that's Chris. So the next day I went to work and he wasn't there. So like 2 days later, every day I was in there like a Mrs. Kravitz, like in there. I was like, where's Chris? So then I saw him. I go, could give girl a heads up, like you're gonna be on the show. And he goes, I didn't even know anybody watched that. I didn't know. I don't know. Like
Yep.
he
That's
told me the
yeah.
whole story about how he and Candace met at this restaurant when they both worked on U Street, the whole story. And then every so often I'd go in there. And so he was always giving us like, if we wanted anybody that worked in the building wanted Diet Cokes or whatever, you just go in the back and get it yourself. So you have to bug the
Mhm.
bartender. He was
Yeah.
just really, really cool. So I would go in there sometimes and be like, what's going on? He goes, just got back from New York. We filmed the reunion. Do you want to see our outfits? And I was like,
No.
sure. I was like, I don't think you're supposed to show people this. I think it's like,
No.
no. And he's like, yeah, what do you think? I was like, you're got some interesting jackets, bud. You're good. I got this great guy that does these jackets for me. I was like, I don't know.
He
But
literally he drove up from DC to my house to do an interview with us.
yeah, I have
Yeah,
always
he's
found
great.
him to be perfectly pleasant and a
Mhm.
good time.
We
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
So I agree. So Chris, if you're listening, I've asked you to come on the podcast and you haven't gotten back to me. All right, back to Southern Charm. So this new guy, JT.
Oh boy.
Okay, you guys, when they did not this past episode, the one before, when they did a swoop around of his apartment,
I know.
I was
It's
like,
gross.
every surface, like in the kitchen, like the sink and I was like, he probably has bugs in that apartment.
From a
There's bugs. There's hoarding obviously going on in there. He just doesn't care. He just has shit everywhere and it's disgusting to look at. And honestly, that's the thing. I feel like that's what people identify as what all single guys' apartments look like. And
Mhm.
it's a bad trope for me. I can't I've got a really clean apartment. My dishes are always clean. Everything's always nice. There's no hoarding. Everything looks great. And then you go into JT's and he's on the phone with his mom calling her mommy 15 times in a row and I'm like, I don't know
Right.
what's going on here, but this guy, look, I mean, I think he was, for what he did in that first episode, while it was coming on very strong and talking about Taylor and Austin's relationship and the sleepover and everything, saying it directly to Shep's face, it was obviously very forced. But people are now
Yeah.
talking about it. And they identified that in this last episode where I think Shep said, look, you started up a shitstorm here, and now this is what we're doing. And we're going to talk. He knows what he did, obviously. Steele thinks he's good for the show. I can't get past that. He's got the most punchable face that I've ever seen. And I just do not want to see him talking much longer than I have to. And maybe I'll warm up to him at some point, but everything that comes out of his mouth, I'm like, dude, you're such a douchebag. Like, I just don't want to hear it.
I kind of agree, and yeah, I agree, and that whole like, well, let's bring this up because the cameras are here. We're like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, it's
You've
tough.
solidified your spot. Like, and he was like, I met these guys a few years ago, and I'm like, what he didn't say is, and I've been trying to get on this show ever
Yeah.
since.
exactly. I
Um,
think he's good for the show. The apartment was like that's the thing about
oh,
JT.
oh,
Everything about him, it never surprises me. When I saw the apartment, I was like, of course that's what your apartment looks like. Of course you call your mom mommy. Of course you talk all this big game about taking your friends to your house in Paris, and it's probably your parents' house, and you leave that
yes,
part out. And
Hmm.
then
obviously,
your weird shit with Taylor, and like you're forcing it, one, for the show, right? You're trying to make a name for yourself, you're trying to look good, you're trying to bring up the drama, but two, this whole puppy dog thing of you clearly have a thing for Taylor. You're clearly trying to push that further. It's not working because, hey, pal, if you brought all your friends to Paris and she hooked up with your friend, she's not going to hook up with you. So, like, let it go. And for you to drag Austin in front of Shep and force this issue because you have a crush on Taylor is a terrible look. But again, not surprising at all. Everything he does is like spot on. And like from a dude standpoint, we can tell you, we know like 15 guys like JT, and they're the worst to hang out with. They don't shut up. They're just like he is a very very picturesque kind of guy. Like when you see him and like what he brings to the show, it's like, yeah, I know guys like you, and every single note you're hitting on the nose, like
Hmm.
without fail. Each week you do one more thing. And I'm like, yep, I've hung out with a guy like you before, and I didn't like him. But
yeah.
for TV, I don't. There's something about him where when he's on there, I'm just like, it's like a train wreck. You can't look away. Like you just got to keep watching this man. You're like, what are you gonna do next, dum dum? Like, let's see what you got next. Like,
Yeah, and he's like that. He is like that annoying friend that's always around. You're like, oh my god, really? Right?
yeah,
You
who
brought
invited
him?
JT again?
Yeah.
Like,
Ugh. But I guess he's probably been around so much. So like, fine, we'll just let him be on the show. He's got a
exactly. Like
gross
he's the
apartment. We
guy.
can get some, get some traction. But
But
he's
do we need to
owns
go
these.
to his apartment at all? Is he that intricate of a character that we need to go to his apartment? No, I
Apparently,
don't need to see that.
Well, I think they did it on purpose to show like. I mean, imagine if he's like such like this hot commodity, because any guy in Charleston's a hot commodity because it's like 80%, women there. So any guy is a hot commodity. And then and then he has all these gorgeous spaces that he's remodeled. And then he brings you back to this apartment and it's like, I
gross.
But you have cameras
gross.
coming over, clean up. He didn't even clean up for that?
Yes.
Like, they're coming over.
Of course he didn't. Of course he didn't. Why would he? It's JT. He's the guy that kicks the door open at the party and goes, "Hey-o!" and everyone goes, "Shit." Like,
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's a great point. That's a great point. That's a great way to
yeah.
end it, actually. So, all right, I want to ask you guys, how long have you had this podcast?
Oh, a little over a year.
You're like 15 months.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you have a YouTube element that you're doing as well. Are you just like strictly recording your podcast and then putting it on YouTube?
Yeah, we do. So each week we do 2 episodes. We record. We put it out on Spotify, Apple, all those, and we do a video one as well. So we have everything, and that's at BravBros Podcast on YouTube. But
Okay.
we're also on every streaming platform as well.
And do you guys do like Supercast, Patreon, all that stuff too?
No, we don't do
No.
that. We have no paywalls yet.
Yeah, no paywalls. We might not even go that route.
Yeah,
We
we
like
don't know.
having free content.
For now, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not supposed to say free anymore. You're supposed to say
Oh.
you're supposed to say the public feed.
The
Oh,
public
okay.
feed.
Public feed. Learn
Uh-huh.
But do
something
we
new
say
every day.
public feed if we don't have a private feed?
I don't know. I just know that like
That's
if
a
I
good point.
say I'll say this is what's in the free feed and then this is what's on Prime, which is Supercast and Patreon, and they're like, you're not supposed to say free feed anymore. You're supposed to say public feed. I'm like, I
Public
can't
feed.
keep up
Okay.
with all
I
with the
can't
things
either,
I'm
man.
supposed to say.
Public
Yeah.
feed. Our public feed is our only feed thus far.
Yes.
You can say your public feed plus your YouTube channel.
Yeah, there we
I
go.
like that. Public
Yeah.
plus.
Public
Public Plus. That sounds like a supermarket in Florida now.
Yeah, Publix.
That's
Yeah.
or it sounds like a tampon or something.
Oh, yeah, all right, there
Okay.
you go.
All right. And then I did find out earlier you guys have been friends since high school, which I think is really cute. And
Mhm.
Steele is Steele's real name, but Shooter is not your real name.
Correct.
It's not on your birth certificate.
It's a nickname that I've had since I was 14.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well,
Shooter
I like it.
Magooter is the full nickname.
Shooter Magooter?
Yeah, and you can change it up like Shooter Madooter. I every time I intro the show, I try to come up with a new nickname for him.
Okay.
And sometimes it's based on what we're going to talk about that episode. Sometimes our listeners will send us some like one was what is it? Scooter My Pooper was
Yep.
one.
Okay.
So our listeners like to join in the fun as well, but it's anything but Sean. Like I don't
Okay.
know who that is.
Okay. All right. And so Steele, you are married and
Mhm.
you and your wife watch these shows together and then you're commenting like this, or are you taking your notes furiously?
So I get in trouble when we all watch the shows together, and Shooter can attest to this because we've had some watch parties. I am I'm an animated watcher. I'll stand up, I'll put my hands up, I'll comment, and
Yeah.
Dev, my wife, and Shooter, and Dev and I and Shooter all went to high school together, so we've all been
Okay.
friends. Like Dev and Shooter are friends as well. They'll both be like, "Dude, shut up," and I'm like, "Oh, sorry, guys," and then I'll stop talking for like 5 minutes, and something will happen. I'm like, "What the fuck?" And I stand up, and then every once in a while, you get like a notebook throw, not like an angry one. I'll like flip it into the couch or something. Like
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
I'm emotional as a person,
Uh-huh.
Very
Yes.
animated.
Okay.
so
Okay.
but yeah, it's fun because like my wife and I will have like full blown conversations. Like I'll come home from work, or she'll come home from work, and she'll be like, "Oh my god, did you hear what Shep said on Southern Charm?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah," and like we'll sit down and talk about it for like 10 or 15 minutes. And the
I
funniest
love
shit,
that. I
yeah,
love
it's
that.
great, and I think it's a great bonding thing. But the funniest is like this time of year we open all the windows, turn the AC off, and
Yeah.
we'll get into some like they're playful, but like some arguments about like we don't always have the same stances. She actually agrees with Shooter more than she agrees with me, which is really funny. But
Okay.
me and her will be having a back and forth about somebody, and I like when we're done, I'm like, our neighbors are gonna think that we're like fighting, and
Yeah.
we're actually arguing about like Giselle and Robin and
Yeah.
something like that.
But it's funny because that's actually how this whole podcast, even the
Yeah.
whole idea came about. Was I would be watching, and it was like post COVID, so you're just watching a lot of TV. And I was
Yeah.
watching with my significant other at the time. Steele was watching with his now wife. We would go to parties, and the women would go and they'd start talking about Bravo, and we would hear them, and maybe like a word or two or a name or two would catch our ears. And then Steele would start talking, and then I would chime in, and then a couple other guys who watch were also chiming in, and then it's just a couple of guys sitting around talking about the Housewives of Beverly Hills. And Steele and I would get very in depth with everything that we're seeing and go further into it. And eventually someone, just the normal thing, you guys should start a podcast and just see what happens. So we did
Yeah.
it. and it just worked out. But it's just really funny, like when we paint that picture, it's just a group of 6 straight guys with girlfriends or wives standing around talking about the shows, much like we would do sports and everything else. And don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, we still watch a lot of sports and we go to games. We've got Phillies gear on right now because they're in the
Yeah.
playoffs, and we have the Eagles to look forward to every Sunday. So we get the best of both worlds, and we just try to push.
Eagles
That
hat,
worked out well.
Phillies shirt. Yes, he's got both. Okay,
Always.
got
It
it.
worked
Yeah,
out
yeah,
really well. But that's
yeah.
just kind of what we bring, and that's kind of the energy that we have. It's very similar to how we have about our sports teams, and we'll get very animated and very aggressive about it.
But that's what's
Ye-
crazy. If you look at Bravo TV, we draw parallels all the time to
Mhm.
sports because all of these Bravo personalities, they're fighting for a contract every year. You got to put up good numbers or you don't come back to the show. If
Yeah.
you don't do great, you might go to the minor leagues, like a winter house or a summer house, like something, or sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you might not get a full ask or you'll go on a girls trip,
Ultimate
something
girls
like
trip.
that. You get sent to the minors, you got to work your way back to the big leagues and you get that contract. And that's what everyone's vying for every year. It's the same thing as sports. And the funniest thing is when guys try to get tough about it, like, oh, you guys talk about Bravo. I'm like, oh, yeah, dude, like you're too tough for a TV show. Like, what are you talking about? By the way, most of those guys eventually, like when we start talking about it, they're like, oh, really, dude, Real Housewives. 5 minutes later, they're like, well, I do watch The Bachelor. I'm like, it's the same thing. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. And the
Yeah.
Actually,
passion,
worse.
yeah, and the passion you show for a sports team is similar to the passion that Bravo people put into these shows. It's no different. It's just a different platform. So when people nitpick about it and get too, I hate when people try to dictate who should watch what TV show. If you want to watch cartoons, by all means, watch cartoons. If you want to watch the news, if you want to watch Bravo, sports, whatever, that's your prerogative. Stay out of people's business. It's annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know when people ask me what I do, I'm like, I'm a podcaster. Oh, really? What do you cover? And this is like something we've said for years. I always go, oh, I cover reality TV. But then I always say, like, and sometimes documentaries,
Yeah,
because
right.
like then
Yeah.
I
You
want
feel
them
the
to think
need.
I'm
'Cause you're afraid.
smarter.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to get the judgment. And this woman that I met with recently, I told her that, and she goes, "Oh, I've never watched any reality shows. I wouldn't know anything about it." And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, and then I just start like blabbering, like talking too much. And I'm like, "Well, like some people are covering The Golden Bachelor, but I'm gonna watch it. But I'm not. But it's gonna be fun just to watch. But I'm not gonna cover it." And then she goes, "Oh, so and so from our neighborhood, literally our neighborhood, is on it." I was like, "Excuse me." So I was like, "You knew that? You knew
Yeah,
that?
Yeah. Oh,
You're
yeah.
not
There you
gonna
go.
watch it, but you seem to know
Yeah.
that Nancy, who's on The Golden Bachelor, who had, like, the crying last week in the wedding dress,
Hmm.
that's a lady that lives in my neighborhood."
yeah.
Yeah. It's
I'm
See,
like,
crazy.
"What? Maybe I'll
Worlds
see her
collide.
around." Yeah.
Eh,
But, yeah, it's a lot of, like, you feel like people are judging you, for what you're watching and also that this is your job, and I'm like, you can ask my friend Ingrid, who's my producer, 10 years ago, if she was said, like, what's your dream job? I'm like, my dream job would be to either write about reality TV or be able to talk about reality TV, the shows that I love, for a job. If there was a way to get paid for that, that's what I'd like to do. I've literally said that to her like 10 years ago. And then slowly but surely, this idea came up, and I started this other podcast called Pain in the Pod, where I interviewed other podcasters because I was so into podcast. So I
Hmm.
just interviewed other podcasters, like, how are you doing it? Mostly like long form, like true crime, like how did it come to you? How long did it take? These kind of things. And then I started co-hosting with Aaron on this podcast, Pink Shade, talking about reality TV. And I was like, oh man, I love it. I love it so much more than talking to podcasters. Then eventually Aaron left and now it's my podcast. But yeah, I think it's a dream job. I think it's a dream job because
Yeah.
it is like you're saying when you're talking about throwing your notebook down and all that. That's how my husband acts when he's watching the Sooners. It's like
right.
screaming and yelling, or it's how my son is when he's playing like MLB on his Xbox. He's like throwing, like, and that's sometimes I get so mad I have to pause it. I'm like, I gotta rewind that. There's no way.
Hmm.
Do you guys
Right.
do that? Do you do a lot of
Oh, all
rewind?
the
Like, I gotta,
time.
I gotta
Frequently.
see it.
I
Yeah.
have to watch it with subtitles on just in case I miss like
Same.
dialogue going on in the background, because the subtitles will bring something from the background into the foreground and you're like, whoa, what's going on back there? They're talking
Yes.
about something different. I'm going to focus on that. And then I miss the thing that happened in the foreground. So I do that all the time. He does it too. I've watched him do it multiple
I
times.
didn't until he told me to. He's like, "Oh, you got to watch with the subtitles," and you will. You'll catch things that happen like in the back of the scene,
Yep.
or you'll get a really great like adverb explaining like how they're talking, like
Yeah.
sing-songy voice. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's fun. Like,
Yeah. Or they're like dramatic music,
yeah,
clown music.
exactly.
Yeah.
Clown music,
Sometimes
Clown
on
music is a great one.
dramatic pause. Like,
sometimes on 90 Day Fiance, they'll put in the captions, they'll put like funny clown music. And then it'll
yeah.
be like doo 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 doo. And I'm like, oh, that's not nice. Don't call him a clown. That's what you're doing, but he probably is one. Well, tell everybody where they can find you guys. Instagram, your podcast, of course, you can find it everywhere, but explain all the places to find you guys.
So you can find us on all social media, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, X. I always want to call it
Yeah.
Twitter, at
Twitter, yeah.
Brav_bros. And you can find our YouTube at BravBros Podcast and subscribe to that. But everything is Brav_bros except for YouTube.
Okay. So where the O should be, you put the underscore.
That's where you put the underscore,
Yep.
correct?
Right. And you guys haven't gotten any shit for using that Bravo logo?
No.
No, surprisingly
And
not.
we've been in contact with them. They've seen our logo. I think
Yeah.
we're cool, yeah. Because it says
Well,
Brav, not Bravo.
Yeah.
well, I mean, Crappens uses the same one. Watch what Crappens,
Right,
and it's
yeah,
the
yeah.
same like Bravo, and they've never gotten in trouble. So I was
Yeah.
just wondering. You never know.
I feel like
Who's
it's
like-
free
I was
promo.
expecting it, honestly. I figured
was
after
too.
a couple of months, once we had that first contact with somebody from Bravo and they saw that, I was expecting it. But no, they're letting it go. So
But
we're
if it
gonna run with
happens now, I'm going to blame you. So
No,
Yeah.
no. Don't blame me. Don't
Just
blame
kidding.
me.
I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
All right, guys. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at Pink Shade Pod. Please, I'm begging you guys. Like, get your cat, your dog's account, your grandparents' account. Grab your grandma's phone. Sign up for Instagram. Follow me. I'm trying very hard to get my numbers up, guys. Can you tell?
Get
I'm
them
just out
numbies
here,
Yeah, you
up.
got to get them up.
just like begging at this
We
point.
will
Begging.
promote you.
Thank you. Maybe
Yeah,
let's send like
nonstop.
a couple thousand my way. That'd be great.
There you go.
And you guys coming up this weekend with Amy, we'll be covering Welcome to Plathville, 90 Day the Other Way. And of course, also on Prime, we're covering 90 Day UK. And of course, on the public feed, it's 90 Day Original plus Love After Lockup, plus Thursdays, of course, is Shades of Bravo. So thank you guys, and I will talk to you soon. I'm gonna maybe see you guys at BravoCon? Question mark?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I got something to tell you about. I got a party to tell you about. So, all right. I'll talk to you
Ooh.
later. Okay.
All right. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Mary Payne.
Ads not read by me, Mary Payne, don't necessarily reflect the views of Pink Shade. If you'd like to listen to ad-free, you're going to go on over to Supercast or Patreon, and you can find the links to Pink Shade Prime at pinkshadepodcast.com.